Hello everyone. We're chasing a story. Okay. France finds a foothold. Let's just start right away. So France finds a foothold in Canada. So in Canada, France had sort of formed New France. It's like the same way the Dutch sort of had New Amsterdam in the Americas. They formed New France, and it was small, but it was sort of compared to Britain's like giant colonies. So it set up an imbalance. Both nations wanted control of the fur trade. Washington, the Ohio River Valley, fought his first war. He wanted to challenge the British in the Seven Years' War in 1754. He sparked what was called the French and Indian War, or in other places, it's actually called 7 Years' War. In other countries, it's actually Americans who call it the French and Indian War. So the war spread around India, Europe, colonies, British, French, whatever. William Pitt threw his resources into the war, and they won batteries in Quebec and Montreal, and they basically just lost Canada, and Britain had a lot of debt. So there was a lot of tension after winning. Colonists wanted more freedom. Britain wanted more tax. Instead of practicing salutary neglect, they increased taxes. Uh, colonists had long the colonists had long been angry at mercantilism because they sort of limited their trade because all the money was funneled back to the mother country. So British imposed new taxes and the resistance grew. The Stamp Act in 1765 was really uproarious. Colonists didn't like it. No taxation without representation. Colonial protests formed Parliament to repeal it. But Britain, they doubled down the Townsend duties. Like they tried to tax glass, lead. Following 1770, I believe it was 1770, the Boston Massacre occurred. They fired into the crowd, killing five things, and the Tea Act, the Boston Tea Party. Defiance occurred. Britain did the intolerable acts, closing Boston's port, but instead the colonies organized, and the First Continental Congress was formed. In 1775, the shot heard around the world and Lexington and Concord. Blood was sort of spilled, and the colonies fought the empire. Britain had a lot of strength, I'll admit it, but they didn't. To be honest, they were professional. They had army and money. Colonies didn't really have anything, but they had George Washington too, who was really good fighting, and they had an advantage of because they knew the area and the land very well. Bunker Hill, um, the colonists fought really fiercely before running out of gunpowder. Britain sort of hired Hessian mercenaries, but it was actually Thomas Paine, in Common Sense, for example, it sold 500,000 copies out of 2.5 million population. Uh, and things like Thomas Paine fought it in 1776, Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. Uh, okay, the war went on. Washington suffered defeats. Saratoga, the British general's invasion collapsed, and France allied with the United States, bringing money, and the conflict widened. Netherlands and Spain joined against Britain. So it was a true global war. Something else, the Treaty of Paris organized in 1783, I believe. 1783, recognized American independence, but that was only the beginning. Colonies had to now figure out how to govern themselves, carrying forward the revolutionary ideals of liberty and self-rule. So the sort of colonists sort of advanced a lot from their humble beginnings, but they managed to sort of fight back and eventually accomplish something that is pretty crazy, a pretty crazy upset. The war was only really the beginning. There's some other interesting things to talk about. So, like, let's talk about Braddock's blunder, right? What was Braddock's blunder? Braddock's blunder. This is actually a little bit from the past, but sort of just bring it up again. Uh, General Edward Braddock was sent by the British, and it was during the French and Indian War before to a fort in Pittsburgh, I believe, just capture it. And Braddock's a career officer, but he wasn't really used to the Americans. The problem is the natives fought using guerrilla warfare. They ambushed them and they attacked their supply lines. He wasn't used to it, and Braddock was literally got slaughtered, and Braddock himself died, and he lost like 2/3 of his people. So George Washington, on the other hand, basically like organized a retreat, and it showed that he knew how to like sort of fight with these new world tactics rather than using these old world tactics that weren't very effective. Uh, and yeah, William Pitt was like really important here. And I kind of glazed over, but common sense was like very important. Thomas Paine himself is very interesting. For example, in Common Sense, he sort of also basically just talks about how monarchy is like sort of wrong and why a democracy better representative of the people. And he brings a lot of these Enlightenment ideals. Um, into into the discussion. Something else very interesting is is yeah, basically peace in Paris is just all about. There's a chapter in the thing which is literally just about the Treaty of Paris. Uh, the Treaty of Paris. There's been a bunch of treaties at Paris, I believe. Treaty of Paris. Um, like I believe how many treaties have there been at Paris? But Treaty of Paris basically just gave Western lands to the United States, gave them the Mississippi River, which is very, very important. That was their western border. That's very, very important because it gave them a water source. It gave them access to new trade routes. It gave them access to fishing spots. It gave them access to all these things. Americans basically just paid all their debts to British people, and all they gave back some of the property that was given to people who were loyal to Britain. And Britain like withdrew all its troops, and eventually they even kept forts in the northwest for like a couple of years, and the British Americans didn't like that. And Spain obviously got Florida back, and France didn't gain really much, but they basically just weakened the British, and that was enough for them. And this gave USA its sort of legitimacy from being like a sort of just like an uprivalrous colony to a real colony. Um, so yeah, okay. What so sorry, I have to do reflection, right? What surprised me the most? Surprised me the most is Brad's blunder, because I just didn't imagine that that sort of general that type of experience could get surprised like that. How does it relate to my current life? I think a lot of the themes are really relevant to today's life, like the theme of uprising against wrongdoing, um, fighting back when you see someone doing something wrong. So I think all those themes are really relevant to today's life. Um, but that's something that can relate to. Thank you guys so much.